Have you ever caught yourself nodding along to an explanation of quantum physics, feeling like it sounds right, but something deep down tells you it doesn't actually explain what you're experiencing in your own life? Like there's a gap between what you are taught and what you feel is real. You're not losing your mind, and you're definitely not alone. Millions of people sense this disconnect, but never say it out loud because questioning science feels dangerous, almost forbidden. Yet the truth is, most of us learned a simplified, watered-down version of quantum physics that was never meant to challenge how we live or how we see ourselves. There's a scientific reason that unease keeps showing up, a reason certain explanations feel incomplete, even when they come from textbooks or authority figures. By the end of this video, you'll understand why so much of what you think you know about quantum physics doesn't actually describe reality as it is, but as it was assumed to be. And once that clicks, once you see what was left out, it quietly changes how you look at consciousness, choice, and even your own awareness. This is where quantum consciousness, hidden reality, and spiritual awakening intersect in ways that most people were never encouraged to explore. Not because it's mystical, but because it's disruptive. Because if the observer effect isn't just a lab curiosity, if consciousness really does play a role in shaping outcomes, then it suggests consciousness creates reality in ways we were never taught to recognize. And before we go any further, there's something you need to know. Something physicists uncovered in 1927 that forced them to rethink what reality even means. Because if they were right, then almost everything you've been told about how the universe works might be pointing in the wrong direction altogether. And that's exactly why so many people are starting to feel this shift right now, even if they can't put words to it yet. As you hear this, you might notice something subtle happening inside you. Maybe a tightness, maybe a sense of recognition, maybe a quiet pull that feels strangely familiar. Just pause with it for a moment. And if a single word naturally comes to mind that describes what you're feeling right now, let it surface without forcing it. One word, nothing more. Drop it below and move on. When enough people tune into the same question at the same time, patterns begin to form that say more than any explanation ever could. And if this is landing differently than other videos you've watched, if something just clicked in a way that's hard to explain, but impossible to ignore, let me know in your own way. That feedback tells me what actually resonates beneath the surface, beyond trends or talking points. There's a small group of people who are ready to look at reality from a different angle, not because they want comfort, but because they're done accepting explanations that don't fully make sense. If you're one of them, you already feel it. No pressure, no labels. But if you're here for a reason. All right, let's go back to 1927. In 1927, at the 5th Solvay Conference in Brussels, physicists like Werner Heisenberg from the University of Göttingen and Niels Bohr from the University of Copenhagen were arguing about experiments that refused to behave the way reality was supposed to. One of those experiments became known as the double slit experiment. The setup was almost embarrassingly simple. They fired a single electron toward a screen with two narrow slits cut into it, expecting it to pass through one slit or the other, like a microscopic grain of sand. What happened next broke the rules of physics. When no one tried to observe which slit the electron went through, it behaved like a wave, spreading out and forming an interference pattern on the screen, as if it had gone through both slits at the same time. But the moment scientists attempted to observe it, even indirectly, the pattern vanished. The electron snapped into behaving like a solid particle. Read that again. One particle, no crowd, no force, just observation, and the outcome changed. This wasn't a philosophical debate or a thought experiment. It was measurable, repeatable, and deeply unsettling. The observer effect showed that the act of measuring wasn't passive. It interfered with reality itself. That same year, Heisenberg formalized this disturbance with the uncertainty principle, proving that the more precisely you observe one aspect of a particle, the less defined another becomes. In simple terms, you can't look without changing what you're looking at. This means that at the most fundamental level of quantum mechanics, reality doesn't exist as a single fixed thing waiting to be discovered. It exists as probabilities inside a quantum field until observation forces one outcome to become real. Possibilities coexist, potential states overlap, and then something notices, and one version locks in. Scientists tried to escape this implication with ideas like Stinger's cat in 1935 and Wheeler's delayed choice experiment decades later, hoping the strangeness would disappear with better explanations. It didn't. It got worse. Every attempt to remove the observer only reinforced the same uncomfortable conclusion. Wait, read that again. Because this isn't just about electrons in a lab. This is exactly why reality feels different when you're paying attention. Why coincidences show up the moment you think about someone. Why situations seem to shift when you're fully present. And why you sometimes get the eerie sense that something changes the instant you notice it. You're not imagining it. According to quantum mechanics, consciousness isn't outside the system observing from a safe distance. It's part of the system itself. Your attention collapses possibilities. Your awareness participates in reality creation. Not symbolically, literally. Every moment you're conscious, you're filtering infinite potential into a single experienced outcome. But here's the disturbing part. They don't tell you in most explanations. If observation shapes reality, if consciousness plays this role at the quantum level, then what happens during the hours you're not really conscious at all? When you're distracted, repeating the same patterns, running your life on autopilot? That autopilot question? There's an answer, and it's worse than you think. In the early 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet at the University of California, San Francisco ran a now famous experiment that cracked open the idea of free will in a way most people still aren't comfortable. He asked volunteers to make a simple decision, like flexing a finger, while their brain activity was monitored. What he discovered shocked the scientific community. The brain showed a measurable signal of decision-making before the person became consciously aware of deciding. In other words, the action began first. Awareness came second. Around that same time, neuroscientists started identifying what's now called the default mode network, a system in your brain that lights up when you're not focused on the present moment. It's active when you're daydreaming, replaying the past, worrying about the future, or just mentally drifting. Pair that with the reticular activating system, the brain's filter that decides what you notice and what you ignore, and a disturbing picture starts to form. Basically, your brain runs on autopilot most of the day. Not sometimes, most of it. You ever drive home and suddenly realize you don't remember the last 10 minutes of the drive? You followed every rule, stopped at every light, stayed in your lane, but you weren't really there. That's the default mode network running the show, which means the majority of your thoughts, emotional reactions, perceptions, and decisions aren't being consciously chosen. They're being executed automatically. And if perception shapes reality at the quantum level, that means a huge portion of your reality is being created unconsciously. Old beliefs, old emotional patterns, familiar frequencies your nervous system already knows how to run. That heaviness you feel sometimes for no obvious reason, that low-grade exhaustion, even when nothing is wrong, that's not laziness or lack of motivation. That's your subconscious mind replaying the same internal programs, projecting the same reality patterns through the same vibration it's been tuned to for years. If your chest just tightened hearing this, or you felt a sudden drop in your stomach, that's not fear. That's recognition. Your body knows before your conscious mind does. This is why you're here. You felt something was off. You sensed that effort alone wasn't the problem. And you were right. But here's the part almost nobody wants to talk about. If 95% of your reality is being generated on autopilot, then whose reality are you actually living? Because once you ask that question, something much deeper starts to surface. And that's where things get uncomfortable. Look, I need to be real with you for a second, and I'm stepping out of the explaining science role here. I spent years thinking something was fundamentally wrong with me. Not in a dramatic, obvious way, but in a quiet, grinding way that follows you everywhere. I was anxious without a clear reason, disconnected even when my life looked fine on the outside. I couldn't explain why I felt out of sync with everything around me. I wasn't enlightened. I wasn't spiritual. I wasn't special. I was a mess trying to act normal, and slowly convincing myself I was broken. That confusion came with a cost. I lost friends because I couldn't relate anymore. Conversations felt hollow. Small talk felt like torture. I'd sit in rooms full of people and feel completely alone, wondering why the things everyone else cared about felt strangely meaningless to me. I honestly thought I was the only one like this. I told myself maybe I was depressed. Maybe I needed medication. Maybe I was overthinking everything and creating problems that weren't there. Those doubts were heavier than the symptoms themselves. Then I came across this research, not looking for awakening or answers, just trying to understand why my own mind felt like a foreign place. And something clicked, not all at once, quietly. I realized I wasn't broken. I was waking up. And waking up doesn't feel peaceful at first. It feels disorienting. It strips away illusions before it gives you anything solid to hold on to. If you've ever felt like you don't belong in the world the way it's structured, like you notice patterns others don't, like simply existing feels exhausting for no clear reason, you're not alone. You're not defective. You're aware. And awareness is uncomfortable before it becomes empowering. The comments on these videos prove it over and over. Different people, different lives, same realization. I thought it was just me. That's not coincidence. That's connection. If hearing this helps you breathe a little easier, if it helps knowing others are navigating the same internal shift, there's something forming here. No pressure, no labels. Just a space for people who are tired of pretending everything feels fine. And if something in your body reacted just now, if you felt seen in a way you didn't expect, drop a 111 below. Just so you know you're not the only one. All right, now that we got that out, let's talk about what you can actually do with this. Here's what changes everything, and it's the part almost no one ever tells you directly. You've been treating your sensitivity like a weakness, like something that makes life harder than it needs to be, when in reality, it's the opposite. You're not broken. You're operating at a different frequency, a level of perception that picks up on patterns, shifts, and inconsistencies most people tune out to survive. That gut feeling you keep ignoring because it doesn't sound logical enough, that's not anxiety. That's information moving faster than conscious thought. That coincidence you dismissed as random timing, that's your consciousness interacting with the field before your rational mind has time to label it. You were never malfunctioning. You were perceiving more than you were taught to trust. Now pull all the pieces together. Remember the double slit experiment, the observer effect, the way unconscious patterns run most of our lives. They all point to the same conclusion. Consciousness isn't just something happening inside your head. It's the fundamental interface through which reality takes shape. Quantum field theory shows that nothing settles into a single outcome until it's observed, which means you're not simply experiencing reality as it happens. You're participating in its creation. Every choice of attention, every moment of awareness, every place you look or don't look collapses one version of reality and leaves countless others unrealized. And right now, in this exact moment, that's happening again. As you watch this, possibilities are narrowing. The fact that this video showed up in your feed isn't random, even if it looks that way on the surface. Something in you was already tuned to this question. Every time you felt different growing up, every time you questioned the rules everyone else seemed comfortable following, every time you trusted an intuition you couldn't explain and later realized it mattered, you were right. All of it. You have access to a level of perception most people will never touch. Not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling to slow down enough to notice what's actually happening. And that loneliness you felt, that sense of disconnection from the world as it's presented, that wasn't a flaw in you. It was an upgrade, a sign that you were seeing beyond the surface, beyond the script, beyond the version of reality that rewards distraction over awareness. But here's the part they almost never talk about when they say consciousness creates reality. If you're powerful enough to influence reality simply by perceiving it, what happens when you encounter someone else doing the same from a completely different frequency? What happens when two observers collapse the field in conflicting ways? When realities overlap, interfere, or collide? That's exactly what the next video is about. But before that, before you go, let's try something together. Just for a moment, Close your eyes for 3 seconds and notice what's happening underneath your thoughts. Not what you're thinking, but what you're feeling. Open your eyes. Let a single word surface naturally. Don't analyze it. Don't explain it. Just drop that word below. One word only. When enough people do this at the same time, something interesting happens. Patterns emerge that say more about the collective consciousness than any long explanation ever could. This channel isn't built for everyone, and it was never meant to be. It's for people who feel too much, see too much, and question too much. The ones who've always sensed there's more going on beneath the surface of reality. If that sounds familiar, you already know this is your space. No pressure, no convincing, no tricks, just truth explored together. The door is open. Walk through it or don't. That part is always your choice. The next video drops in 3 days, and it goes into something most people avoid thinking about. What happens when two conscious observers create conflicting realities in the same space? Why some people drain your energy instantly? Why others elevate you without saying a word? Why you can feel someone staring at you before you ever turn around? It's going to change how you see every relationship you have. Your consciousness brought you here. What happens now is your choice.